All right, so this is the joiner. Yesterday we talked about the planer. Remember, the planer is going to make the faces of the board smooth. The joiner is going to make one of the edges smooth. Okay, we're only going to do one edge on here because then we're going to cut the other edge on the table saw. That'll make a little bit more sense tomorrow when we talk about the table saw. So after you plane a board, you got to make sure it's planed because it's got to be tight up against the fence. If it's not tight against the fence, then it's going to be, when you send it through, your board will be uneven on the edge. And especially if you're gluing together like a tabletop, you want that to be perfectly square on the edge. So a few things you need to do when you come over here, check and make sure this thing is square. Okay, so you'll grab a tri-square and check and make sure this is 90 degrees. Usually will be. I think we might have changed this thing once or twice, but it is possible that it was changed. If it's not at 90, it's not going to be a straight cut. Right here we've got the cutter head. This thing has the knives on it and spins at a few thousand RPMs. So just think spinning metal with knives, 3,000 RPMs, bye-bye fingers. Okay? So after you come over, make sure it's square. Pull this back. This is the guard. Pull it back, make sure it bounces back into place. That's what keeps your hands safe from those spinning knives of doom. Couple other parts. In-feed table is where you start your boards. Remember, that was one of our words yesterday. In-feed, you push it through. This is the out-feed table. If you need to adjust it to take different amounts of material off, we adjust the in-feed table. Okay, make sure you remember that. If you ever adjust the out-feed table, you will not be my friend. Okay? If you adjust the out-feed table, I've got to go back and make sure the out-feed table is perfectly level with the top of the highest point on the knives. If it's not, your board's either going to snipe, which means it tears off the corner, or it's going to taper, which means that it gets smaller at one end. So that will not make you my friend. Okay? So adjust the in-feed table only. Maximum you're going to take off is about 1/8 of an inch. Take off much more than that, it's going to tear your board up. So don't take off more than 1/8, and there's a guide over here that tells you how much you're taking off. Usually we have this thing set up to take off between a 32nd and a 16th. The more you take off, the more noticeable it is when you're cutting, and you'll feel the difference in the machine. So take off maximum of 1/8 of an inch. Never try to do something that's thinner than a 1/4 inch. If you try to do something that's thinner than a 1/4 inch, it's going to be pretty weak. And so as it's going through here, you may end up destroying the edge of your board or the entire board. Make sure as you do this, your hand placement's important. Okay, there's a 4-inch margin of safety, which means that your hands don't get within 4 inches of the spinning blades. When you're doing this, you're going to have one hand here, and it's going to be pushing up against the fence. Because a lot of times, I'll come over here and help people, or I'll just stand at the table saw and just kind of watch. You see this gap that's right in here? It's a little exaggerated. People get that gap all the time. You got to make sure it stays tight. So you push that tight up against the fence. You'll have one hand doing that. The other hand's going to be up on top of your board. Okay, when it's up on top, always bend your fingers in when you're doing woodworking stuff. Okay, it's a good idea to get in the habit of. If I've got my hand like this over the back edge of the board, and it gets over here and slips, where's my finger going?
In the hole.
Straight into the what'd I call it? The knives of doom. Don't want that to happen. Okay, so keep your hand up on top, fingers curled over so that you're not going to slip into it. And that's if your board sticks up above the fence. Okay, this is the fence on here. If your board's shorter than the fence, this hand's going to be within 4 inches, so use a push stick. The push stick's going to be used for stuff that's under 4 inches. And so you just push the board right through. And you're not going to have to lift it up. The only reason I'm having to lift it up now is because the machine's not running. When the machine's running, it takes off the material and gets it even with that outfeed table. Let's see. Want to make sure that I cover everything that's on there. Minimum length board is 12 inches. Okay, you can go down to 8, but absolutely nothing under 8. Most of the stuff that you guys will be doing 12 inches will be fine. If you get a board and say this board is probably like 16 inches long. Okay, if you get a 16-inch board and you're only going to be using 12 of it, just to joint the entire thing. If you get this size board and it needs to be planed, just plane the entire thing. Because if you don't plane it and you don't join it, this little piece you cut off is worthless. We can't use it for anything. Because it's rough, we can't send it through the planer because it's too small. We can't put it through the joiner because it's too small. So it's trash board. So just run the whole thing through the planer, run it through the joiner, and then cut it off, and then somebody else might be able to use that extra piece. So minimum length is 12. I had a student 2 years ago come in. He was rushing, and he was cutting something that was like 6 inches. And generally, you're going to be doing the edge of your board. Okay? Occasionally, I might have you do the face of the board. And if you do the face of the board, it feels like you're going to lose control of the board at any second. So that's why I have almost nobody do it. Once in a while, I'll do it for people if their board will not plane smooth. But generally, we're never going to do it. So you run your board through like this, and your hands are really, really stinking close to the knives. This person was doing that, but he wasn't using a push stick. So he was running it through like this, fast. It was smaller than the margin of safety, and it was smaller than the minimum length. And the reason why there's a minimum is if your board's too short, it's not going to be able to balance on both tables. So there's going to be part of it that's going to sink in. So that's why as you're pushing on your board, when you send it through, you can't be pushing really hard back here because you might tip your board down and it's not going to cut straight. So you got to make sure you're having a hand here holding it down and a hand and something back here holding it down and pushing it. So the person was going too fast, board was too small, not using a push stick when he should have, and ended up slipping and nicked, I think, 2 of his fingers. Tore the tips of them up really, really bad. And everybody still talks about it. He's in my second hour now, and when we talk about safety, that's what everybody talks about, is the fact that he wasn't safe. So don't do something like that. Work at a normal speed. Use a push stick when you need to. Don't do something under 12 inches. Just follow the safety things I'm talking about. When you're using a machine, stand next to it. You don't want to stand back here, and if you're waiting for the machine, you also don't want to stand right here. Okay, the timeout room's not going to be here much longer, but when it's not here, you don't want to stand here, because if this thing kicks back, it's going to kick back this way. So you always stand to the side, right in here. And if I'm helping you, I don't bite. I've never ever bit somebody, so don't stand way back here and push your boards through. Okay, if you're doing this, stand over here, and I'll occasionally come up and help people. And I'll just stay on this side, hold it up against the fence. Okay, don't think I'm going to bite and stand as far back as you possibly can, because then you're not going to be able to send the board through very well. Make sure the machine's running at full speed before you touch it to the blades. Okay, so turn it on, let it get going full speed, and then start it. Or then start your board. Make sure the dust collector's on. You'll hear it. You guys heard it yesterday. It's pretty loud. If it's not on, it piles up sawdust all over the place and starts dumping it on the floor and makes for a big fun mess to clean up. Let's see. Never do the end grain. Okay, this is for the edge. Remember, what's this face? What's this part of the board called? Face. Edge. End. Never do the end. Okay, I talk about that every year, and I still get people that do it. First of all, your boards will almost always be less than 12 inches. Okay? The only time they wouldn't be is if you're doing like a table and you have a tabletop you're trying to joint. You bring that over here. If it is bigger than 12, you run it through, and the way this thing works, it tears out the back of your board. So it ends up taking the back little bit of it and exploding it. So don't do it. Okay, I've had people do that, and then they have to cut the edge off, and their board's smaller than it was, and then it looks funny. So don't do that. Cut with the grain. If you're running your board through and you're doing the edge and it still kind of tears it up a lot, flip it around and do it the other way. Because it might be that you're going against the grain, and especially maple does that a lot. So if you're using maple and it tears out the edge when you're running it through, flip it around and do it the other way. Chances are it probably won't that way. It's really, looking at it, from the edge, it's hard to tell. Usually, if you can look at your board on the face, and you got these, it's called cathedral. If you see, it's very noticeable on oak, maple not so much, but if you see the grains right here, that's usually pointing the direction of the grain. So this one I would send through like this. On maple though, it's not always as noticeable. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to use this. Tomorrow, I don't like to do safety demonstrations on Friday and then have you take a test on Monday. So tomorrow, you guys are going to demonstrate how to use this in the planer. And you're going to take the test on these two. Okay, so that's going to take probably most of the hour. Demonstrating will take a lot of time. And then doing the test will take a few minutes. All right? So I'm going to turn on the dust collector. When I do this, oh, and then when you're done using it, stay here until it stops spinning. You'll see how fast this spins and then how long it takes to shut off. I've had people walk away and left it spinning, and then the next person comes up to check and see if this is going to work, and the knives are still spinning. Okay, so make sure you stand there till it's done. If somebody else comes up and says they need it, just leave it going and let them use it. Okay. You guys are all safe where you're standing, so don't worry about safety goals. All right, make sure that this is all cleared off. One hand over here holding it, other hand up on top. Chop off your fingers, and it would just destroy the dowel rod as soon as it touches it. So don't ever do that, and also don't stick your fingers in. And the reason I use a dowel rod is that's kind of close to the same hardness as your finger.
Show me how you hold that one.
Hold the board?
Yeah.
If I'm doing the board with a push stick, one hand up against here, the other hand up here. With one hand against the board, one on the push stick pushing. If I'm doing it without a push stick, push this hand up against it and this hand up on top. Okay? So, can you go ahead and push the stop button? So tomorrow, when you guys come in and you guys take